Hi there guys, Obsidian Chill. I've got another video for today. Side note, the background to the first part of this video is a base brought to you by Bryce Allen. He plays on both servers, but this is his EUPS villain, One Punch Team base. He's a good friend of mine, and he lent this to me so you have a background, so you just don't have to stare at the same thing while you listen to me talk. But ironically, this video is actually supposed to be on a different topic. What I was going to talk to you about was my thoughts on how mentals, grandeur, mass terror, weapon mastery, crit cheese, the 2 PI, the 1 PI, ice's ice elemental supercharge, gadget's consumable block clipping, and how the cheese is pretty much all the same, just varying degrees of it. But really, that conversation has become completely redundant now that they released the major update a couple days ago, the stats revamp, the development update. And I thought I was going to talk to you about that. Now, I don't post on the forums nowadays for reasons that are beyond my control. But when I started going through this thread, I thought the first thing that we posted, I could be wrong, you could have just removed the comments, but I was waiting for the hashtag Obsidian was right comments. Like, where are you guys coming to my defense there? So basically, if you don't know, I'll link the stream description as well as a forum post in the description below. You can check it out. I'm sure you've heard something about it, but this is going to be basically my thoughts and opinions on it. So essentially, what they're doing is every change that Spittle made to the game, gameplay related, they're basically just tossing in the garbage can. Everything that he touched in the game, they're basically scrapping. And I'm sure everything that MEPS helped Jens Anderson create, they're just scrapping. Basically, they're almost rewinding the game back to like 2014. So if I had to summarize, I had to give like a quick summary to someone who had no idea on the topic or basically an old player that left after GO36, which is a lot of my friends that they left after that. If I describe it, it'd be they're trying to make the game like it was before, minus all the jump clipping, because that's obviously not going to be returned. What they're doing is they're removing weapon mastery, they're removing advanced mechanics, they're removing the power regen from advanced mechanics, they're revamping all the stat trees, which I'll get into. Is kind of just an overview. I'll talk to you about it in a moment. But essentially, it's going to be a brand new game. Basically, everything's going to change. The only thing it's going to look the same. That's about it. Everything else will change foundationally. How the raids play out, everything will change. And why is that? Because while they do the stat revamp, right now everything's geared towards advanced mechanics, weapon mastery. Bosses have such high health, such high one-shots because of the damage that these do, and that if you DPS stack heavier raid, where it's like the typical setup now is like 1 to 2 tanks depending on if it's a dark side lead, but usually it's 1 tank, 1 troller, 1 healer, and 5 DPS. That's the meta now that DC has. Where before, in the old days, it used to be 1 tank, 1 or 2 healers. Usually, you try to do 1, and then it was like 3 trolls and 3 DPS or 4 DPS and 2 trolls. So it's going to be closer to that. It's almost too much to go into all the changes that they're making, and a lot of it we have to take with a grain of salt because we obviously don't know what it's like till test, so we can't really speculate on anything except for the fact of what they kind of told us. We'll get into like the stat trees. So basically, the way it's right now, you have power, skill points, and that's it. So weapons, you have super speeds, your movement trees, you have your power trees. That's essentially what it's come into. Now, what they're changing is they're making everything available to you all at once. Well, besides leveling, like you're still gonna have certain powers and certain skill points unlock as you level. But basically, if you're an endgame player like you are now, everything's going to be available to you right away. So you're going to have all your crit chances basically in one giant tree, and basically after that you unlock certain tiers to advance your crit. So say your first level or first tier would be 2% critical attack. Then you spend like 4 or 5 more skill points, it'd be 4%, 8%, as etc. And then basically you don't have the typical PowerPoint progression where you have to take this power to unlock this power and work your way down the tiers. Everything's available all at once, and the skill points go for there. So right off the bat, as they've been telling us before, stats matter. There's going to be a heavy emphasis on skill points, where the more damage, the more crits you do, etc., all can be based on how many skill points you have, rather than power. So if I had to take a wild guess, it's gone are the days where you could be, like 175 CR and 80 skill points. It's the damage is going to nosedive from there that you do because you don't have the skill points to supplement your damage. And they haven't told exactly. Like they said, they're removing damage modifiers. They're removing the max damage mod to basically become like core strength now. So since 6% modifier, it'll be like plus 5%, plus 10% or something. So think of max damage. So modifiers are gone. Think of the max damage mod more like core strength. Modding, I think, is going to remain the same. That's not going to change anything. Just be, obviously, since all the stats are going to change, we don't know what's going to impact what until everything hits test. But the bigger deal is, since all the weapons change, how much damage you do, how much powers you do, because think about like the game before, back in the old game, you didn't have power regen mechanics. There was no power regen. The closest thing we got to power regen was hard light's precision combos and not using any power because they're hard light constructs. That was the closest thing that DPS got to power regen. It was just that you use your weapon to regen more, and obviously you're dependent on the trolls. That's why it was a very troll-heavy game. People complained about being batteries. Now they're complaining that their trolls do nothing because there's still a battery. There's just one of them now instead of 3. So basically, it all ties into Spittle and Jens being complete retard and having no idea the direction of the game he wanted. Well, he actually, that's a lie. He had the 100% direction of the game that he wanted. He just left out all the players and said, screw you guys, I'm going to do what I think the game should be, and look where we are now. Everything that he changed is getting thrown in the recycling bin. Now, I wouldn't fault entirely Jens on that. That's not all on him. Some of it's on Daybreak and what they did, because one of the reasons they had to do this, there are like almost no devs left from that previous time. It's the easiest for them just to start over and recode the game from their point of view and make all these changes than rather work on the code it is right now. Like you've got devs like Tunzo gone. Like the reason why we're not seeing so many PvP updates is because these devs have to learn all what Tunzo did. So they can't just pick it up, read the book, and say, oh, this is how Tunzo did this. We can tweak it by this. Like immunity is probably going way over their heads right now. So they've got to figure out the base coding for that. Then they can work on changing immunity. So it's in this side of the game, PvE side, because I really don't think this update is going to matter much for PvP. We don't use weapon mass. You don't use advanced mechanics. Obviously, the weapons will be adjusted, but other than that, I don't think PvP is going to be wildly impacted from this as much as PvE would, obviously. And that's another aspect as well. They're removing the whole concept of mid-range. So obviously, we've been trolled for the past 2 years, saying we're waiting for gadgets and all these power sets to get their mid-range updates. Well, now all that's out the window. Like I said, that's being scrapped. Obviously, I could have saved them a lot of time if they just listened to me, because I was literally the first person and the first video to be uploaded saying Weapon Mastery was going to be freaking trash and it was going to destroy the game. Now look what happened. It just destroyed the game, and now they're revamping. So, but I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna trying to stop commenting like that, because it's almost happy and sad at the same time. Sad that it took them 2 years to figure this out, and happy that maybe we'll get to have a new game here. But back to what I was talking about with the mid-range updates. They're basically making all powers do the same damage no matter what range. Now, asterisk there, they're still going to have melee, because you still have to have separate melee damage, range damage. So they're still going to have damage do melee powers or melee-centric powers do more damage closer to 7 meters, and everything after 7 meters will do this amount of damage. So there's still going to be a melee aspect of the game, where you would think melee powers will still do better versus mid-range or range powers. It's just that you don't have to. They're eliminating basically the mass terrors, the EMPs, where you had to stand, like 15, 20 meters away, or EMP wasn't going to hit. Basically, if you think of it, EMP is going to hit from any range. But then again, since all the powers are changing, they talked about basically kind of like what was before, like the longer animation your power is, the more damage it does. But really, I think a lot of people's loadouts are going to be based on almost what they were before in the past. You're going to have your buff, you're going to have your clipping powers, you're going to have your dots clip with your powers. So it's anything. In all actuality, I think a lot of the loadouts, unless there's drastic changes to the power, obviously we're not going to know from test, but I think it's going to work a lot like what gadgets used to be. You used to pop your dot, which was stasis field with intimidation, so you'd have your intimidating clipped with stasis field, then you went into Gauss and foam, and once all your dots were out, you use photon blast, stuff like that. Like, it's going to be a lot more heavy with that, what it used to be. Now obviously the fade dots have changed. You're going to have other clipping tools available to you. So it's basically, think of it, the easiest way to explain it to myself is like what I said before. It's basically going to be 2012, 2013, 2014 game without jump clipping or jump canceling. It's going to be what it is now. Think of it what the game is now, just remove all the power regen. So it's going to obviously take some adjustment because you're so used to hitting 1, 2, 3, 4 and doing all this. And they're thinking this is going to bring the skill back to the game, which I think it is. The other topic that they touched in, what I haven't talked about yet, is the support role damage. This has been a topic. Some people are going to have mixed feelings on this. I personally don't care either way. I see the reasoning from both sides and why they're upset, why they're not upset. Since the induction of this game, healers, trollers, tanks, evolving, pushing, we should be doing way more damage. Like, we should be, almost topping their charts or whatever. So they want to do more damage. They don't want to just be, having a troller doesn't want to be spamming instant and power. A tank just doesn't want to be hitting powers and blocking. They want to be able to do damage too. The closest the devs got to that was atomic tanking, hybrid tanking, where you can do a lot of damage because you don't have to block. So you don't have to block, you can do more damage, etc. So basically what they said was they're going to normalize the damage basically. So all support roles will be doing, a lot more damage. And obviously DPS will do more damage, but it's not going to be like the difference it was before. Like when you go into a dark side, the healer's doing like 1 million damage, and you got the DPS doing 24 million damage in like half an hour. So it's not going to be that much of a discrepancy between it. If anything, I've had to take a guess. It's going to be all support roles are going to. If you had to make a comparison that you can understand, all the support roles are going to be like atomic tanks, and the damage they can do, and the DPS is still going to be there. So obviously an atomic tank isn't going to top the charts, but it's still going to do enough damage to make a difference on the scoreboard or make a difference in the raid. So the DPS aren't going to be 20, 30 times above that. And what that allows is they can scale back some of these NPCs and change their health pools, because since all roles are doing more damage, you don't have to have those heavy hitting one shots that can wipe the groups. Or have such high health pools that eventually something happens that wipes the group, because you got more damage overall as a team, rather than all your damage focusing on 3 or 4 DPS, and if they wipe or the discrepancy in the powers. So that's I'm indifferent to that. I'm not either way. Like, I don't care if support wants to do damage, as long as the game is still favored to have support players learn their roles. Like, I don't want to see players sacrifice giving power, healing, just because they want to do a bunch of damage. That is the atmosphere that we can't create in the game, which I think obviously it might lead to with that, just because it's a damage-driven community. And if they can know that they can do damage with support roles, they're going to focus more on doing damage than they're actually learning the role. So that's my concern with it. I know other people share that as well. But honestly, this is so new right now, and don't think about like this is gonna be hitting tests like next week. Like it's just like, you remember when the server merge was announced? What was that? Almost a year after they announced it, the server merge became actuality. Like, it almost became a running joke where was server merge still happening, and we got little hints with that, like the name sharing across the leagues. That's kind of hints towards it. But I think this is good. It's going to require a lot of testing, because everything changes. Like, it's basically like a beta for the game that's going to be on test. Everything's got to be tested with power combinations to make sure there's nothing, OP, how much power regen, how much power you use, the scat difference, the skill difference. So it's overall the direction is great. What they're heading, like, this all sounds really good on paper. I think a lot of people are going to be overhyped at the moment, just because it's something they learn. They don't have to do weapon mastery, they don't have to do AM. But what I'm upset is these same people that were saying, "Oh, yeah, forget jump canceling. You know, webmaster and AMs are going to be the future. They're going to be great." Those same players right now are saying, "Oh yeah, webmaster AM sucks. I want to go back to what it was before." And players like myself and others that were super against what we saw, what webmaster and AMs were going to do to the game, we were vilified. I was vilified by the majority of the community. If you don't believe me, look up Spittle's thread putting on a player hat thread, the one where I released that Spittle video with the hard light comparison one. That was the trolley video that kind of started my alienation from the devs. But I was basically vilified because of my thoughts on Webmastery Advanced Mechanics, and now 2 years later, what are they doing? They're scrapping all of it. So, yay me, I guess. I don't know. Take care, guys.